Hello and welcome to the Empathy Podcast. This podcast seeks to explore the minds of those who not only understand or experience empathy, but of those who wish to take action, build, and practice empathetic behavior through conscious decision and responsible lifestyle choices. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, this podcast might be just for you. So sit back, relax, and use what you were born with, empathy. All right, hello and welcome to the Empathy Podcast. I'm here sitting with a super special individual. He's coming to us from Spain, and so that's super exciting. His name is Andre Venus, and he's 19 years old, and he's been vegan for 5 years, and he's studying environmental preservation in the university in Norway and dreams of helping to end climate change. So that's super awesome. I can't wait for everyone to get a chance to hear that and how that's going to happen, because that's definitely right up our alley and in line with empathy, because if you don't care about the planet and the people that live on it, then we need to shift that. We need to change that, because that's very important, because without a planet, we only have one planet. There is no planet B. And if we eat like Americans eat, we need like 4 planets. We really got to look, everyone here in America, we need to look right in the mirror, because we are consuming more than any other country on the planet Earth. So before we jump right into all that, I want to ask you, what does empathy mean to you?
Well, I think that everyone has their own definition of empathy, but the way I view empathy is that it's the ability to be able to understand the feelings that other people have, and not only understand, but be able to share them, which means be able to put yourself in their shoes. And when I mean other people's shoes, I mean, in my case, it's to all humans, no matter what kind of person you are, to all non-human animals out there that we're sharing this planet with the planet, environment, and even the future generations of lives that have not been born yet. So that is my main understanding of empathy. And as I think that empathy is key for the planet.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. I mean, if we don't care, about others, then we're not going to make the impacts that we need to make. And if you look at most animals on the planet, most animals give back more than they take. And most organisms and plants also give back more than they take. We're one of the only species that takes way, way, way more than we give back. And so we got to learn how to give back a little bit more, because we are not very good role models when it comes to that. So number 2, the next thing I want to ask you is, well, what do you think our planet will be like in 2050 if we continue business as usual?
So I think that there will be huge differences in our lives in 2050 if we continue the way we're living now and continue increasing as drastically as we have these last few decades. I think that it's kind of impossible to know exactly how it will be, but I can assume that there will be, like, even things that we view as given to us. I think that even these type of things are going to be so much different. For example, water and food. And for example, obviously the whole environment is going to be so much different. There's going to be so much more destruction of rainforests and the nature in general. Air pollution is going to get much worse. And the way that the population keeps on growing these last few years, who knows how many people there's going to be in this world. And with that, many, many different disasters can occur. So there's no doubt that change needs to be made and needs to start now. We can't wait.
Yeah, it's like they say the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago, and the second best time is now. That's the second best time. And so it's like the best time to really think about and make some adjustments towards climate change is 10 years ago. But the second best time is right now, definitely. All right, cool. So next, I want to ask you, what is it like living in Spain? I haven't visited, but I hear great things.
Well, I really like Spain as both for tourism and as living. one of the things I enjoy a lot about Spain is the more, a bit more tropical way of living. So the people and lifestyle that we all have is much more relaxed. We focus a bit more on experiences than, doing this, that. It's much more relaxing, it's calming, and just being able to find peace and do what you truly want to instead of just stressing over the things that you could be doing with your time. And as well as I really like the variation of vegetables and different foods. It's like there's so much that can be grown here because of the amazing climate. So I really enjoy it. For me personally, the only problem with Spain is the spring, which is unfortunate as I have so many allergies. If it wasn't for this, then I would for sure want to continue living here.
Yeah, for sure. And like even Spain, like I remember it was last year, right? Where you guys got hit by the wildfires, right?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah,
And
and the same time California here, where I'm at, got hit by wildfires too. And the wildfires for us in California was the deadliest in California history. That means the most people ever died in history in one fire season last year. So last year was the worst ever.
Horrible.
So if it was the worst last year, and like it doesn't seem like we're getting better, like what's next? What's this year? Next
exactly.
year.
Like
what's 5 years? Like when is enough enough?
Yeah, for example, in Brazil, because I'm half Brazilian, the family from my mother's side is Brazilian, and just go back 10 years ago in Brazil, there was never any sort of climate disasters. There's never been anything. However, if you see the last maybe 2 or 3 years, suddenly they started having hurricanes in parts of Brazil. And well, it's just the start of the start of the end, not to be dramatic. Even a country which has never experienced these type of disasters are starting to experience it. Like, what more evidence do you need to see that?
They're not the only ones. There was hurricanes and typhoons, because I know it's different in each area, like cyclone, typhoon, and hurricane, like depending on like whatever hemisphere you're at. I don't know. But the one that was in the Middle East, the Middle East area, I think is called cyclone. It goes into like India. India gets hurricanes. We know that's common. But there was a place in the Middle East that was getting hit by hurricanes. It got hit by a couple tropical storms, 2 back to back or something, like near Yemen or right down there in that desert area. And that desert had got such huge puddles and huge rivers, areas of water that doesn't ever happen, and it created a breeding ground for locusts. And now there's a huge locust swarms that have never been seen before. The people are like they're like millions and millions of locusts in this Middle Eastern area and hidden in Africa. That is really concerning. And like it looks like like the 10 plagues. You know what I mean? Because like that's part of it is like the locust. And so there's all kinds of crazy weather effects. The weather effects are being changed also, like where rainy seasons, like monsoons typically hit, right? They're not hitting when they normally hit. So it's changing up the seasons by a lot. It's changing up how they do agriculture. And there's also places that are normally getting their monsoons aren't getting the rain. It's not happening. So they're getting droughts and the timing is all off. These consistent timings, these rituals that they have built for this agriculture, for their food, is being disrupted by weather patterns that are unexpected. And they say every degree like Celsius of increase of temperature in like the atmosphere, every degree increase, the atmosphere can hold 10% more water. So if the atmosphere can hold 10% more water, then that means that the droughts are going to be 10% more extreme and the floods are going to be 10% more extreme for every degree, So, and that's a big percentage. Like that's not a small deal, 10% more drought and 10% more flood. It's really bad. But anyways,
it's a big deal for sure.
There's a lot of things like that, like feedback loops and stuff on the weather patterns. But I wanted to jump right into, if you don't mind, a little bit more about you. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. Okay. So as you said before, my name is Andre. I am 19 years old, and Honestly, genetically speaking, I am half Norwegian and a half Brazilian. So my mom's side is Brazilian and my dad's side is Norwegian. And partly because of this, I've been moving around the world and living in lots of different places. For example, I was born in Norway, and when I was 2, I moved to Spain for the first time, and I lived there until I was 7. And then we moved to the US, in Texas, and we lived there for around 3 years. And we moved back to Norway for a year, and then moved back to Spain. And now I'm going to move back to Norway, just moving all the time. My whole life has been moving. And there's pros and cons of this. And one of the main pros that I feel I've benefited from this type of lifestyle is I think that I'm able to see and view different cultures and different ways of living much better, as I've experienced so many different. I've seen the Brazilian culture, I've seen the Norwegian culture, I've seen the American culture, the Spanish culture. So I think I've benefited a lot from this, and I'm able to, as I was talked about before, empathize with how people grew up and what kind of things that they go through in life that cause them to have their point of view of the planet. I think people are just they're just experience of what they've gone through, which makes them who they are. And I think that through all of these different situations I've been in, I've been able to spot this and understand a bit better. Whilst the cons, I would have to say that I have to get used to different ways of living all the time. But yeah, so I've been moving a lot. And right now, last year I finished my school. So now after summer vacation, I'm going to be starting university in Norway, where I finally decided what I want to work with. And that is, and the environment as it is my passion. I really want to have a good influence on this planet. I want to make it a better place and just try to influence others to just take small steps to help this planet improve, as I believe that this is the time we need to focus on this instead of the way we've been living previously.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're absolutely right about like traveling to different places and different cultures. As I travel around, I lived in the Middle East for a little while. I traveled to Europe. I traveled to Indonesia, and I traveled to China, and I traveled to Mexico, which isn't that far. And so seeing all those different cultures and different styles of people, you're right. You do empathize and you do understand what they're going through and what makes them think the way that they think. For example, in the U.S., when I'm taught about Muslim culture or what happens in Muslim countries, it's so not even true at all when I was living in a Muslim country. And so the fact that I can understand the perception that the U.S. has, but I can also understand, the reality of what it really is. And so that just spoke to me in a different way. And I've heard people talking, about other countries and stuff like this, and I just think you don't even know. You've never been there. There's no way you can know something until you've experienced it. So I think the fact that you've experienced it, you can at least speak about it. Hey, when I when I was in the U.S., it was like this. What I saw was this and this and this, versus just watching what the media tells you.
Yeah,
because that you're not going to get the truth if you only look at that.
Now the media, it's not the most reliable source of information.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I want to ask you is part of empathizing is thinking about others, and part of it is imagining what it would like to be others. And I know that a big part of your life is animals and caring for animals and not wanting to harm them, and having the ability to say, you know what, I can see that they experience pain, and I can see that they experience life. They don't want to die. I can understand that. What led you to that conclusion where you went vegan?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, it's quite a lot of different factors that came into play. But just starting at the beginning, I would like to say that I've always been very fond of animals. Growing up, I would always whilst most people were already playing on the consoles or talking about sports and stuff like that, I would always just like to be with myself, read books about animals. I remember when I was growing up in USA, there was a huge library in the school. Most people were either reading about guns, about politics, about sports, and I would just read every single animal book there was. I've always been super interested in animals. It's always been like one of my priorities to be kind to animals. I would always play with like animal toys. I would talk about animals. I would always like love seeing wildlife. And this, I think, alongside with having a pet dog has truly made me learn to empathize with animals. Although there are differences, but the way I see it, there are much more in common. And not only is there more in common, but the things we have in common are much more important than the things that are different. And from a young age, I've always had more or less this perception, even though I had no idea what veganism was at the time. And around when I was 13, I think, my older brother became vegan. So that is when I first heard about the whole concept of veganism. And well, at the time, I mean, he didn't really talk too much about it. He was a bit more conservative about talking. He was like, he didn't want to be judged and feel, different. So I wasn't really influenced at the very start. But then as time went by, he started feeling the responsibility of talking. And I started learning a lot more about this lifestyle. And I got a bit curious. I'm not going to lie. I was also, making those same old jokes that we hear all the time. And yeah, as time went by, I started learning much more about veganism. But what truly made me consider veganism at the start was, in fact, when I was 15 years old, so 2 years after my brother went vegan, I had a white mark on my forehead. So I actually went to the doctor and checked it out, and I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And well, yeah, it was a tough time, but I just wanted to figure out if there was anything I could do. The doctor said there wasn't really anything I could do, but we were persistent. We searched on the internet, and we were just trying to find alternatives. And that is when we came across to Dr. Joel Furman. I don't know if you've heard of him. He is a plant-based doctor that helps a lot with mostly health issues. And that is when I first went vegan, or maybe you might want to call it plant-based. So at first I did it for my own health. But then as time went by, I started seeing that I enjoyed eating this food, and then I started watching the other aspects, and then I just got completely motivated to stick to this lifestyle. And I said, it doesn't matter if I get cured or not, I'm going to continue being vegan, not for my health, but for the animals and the environment. I think that I've been in all three stages, the stage of, making jokes, sending pictures of burgers to my vegan brother and laughing, aren't you going to miss meat, to being the stage where I was plant-based, and then to the stage of actually being vegan for the animals and the environment.
Yeah, for sure. I have a similar path. I actually didn't go vegan or try going vegan or plant-based until I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And I was led into the documentary, What the Health. And then I learned about the ways to cure autoimmune diseases, cancer, heart disease, some of the leading killers of humans in the entire world. It was basically gave a blueprint on how you could reverse these things and stop them. And I was like, well, why doesn't everybody know this? Everybody, what? This is going to stop killing how many people? And I was like, okay, everybody should know this probably, right? And nobody thinks this. Everyone's against it. And I'm just like, it blows my mind. But I tried it, and then I got healthy, and I was like, okay, there's definitely something to this. And then I learned about the animals in the environment as well. Yeah, very similar. So now what would you say is something that, or some of the things that you do to give back? Because I think it's one thing to just say like, okay, I am not going to hurt any animals, or I'm going to be empathetic and I'm going to have empathy for others personally. But it's a whole nother thing to teach others how to do it and impact other people. So what are some of the ways that you're impacting others to do this?
Well, Honestly, at the start, I didn't really do any type of activism. I was a bit, yeah, I was a bit afraid of speaking out because, I was at my teenage years and everyone else was, eating the traditional way, meat, cheese, all animal products. So I felt a bit different. And, yeah, so I didn't really do too much activism. However, these past 2 years, I started an Instagram account where I at least try to motivate people to try to eat more plant-based or vegan foods. So I post a lot of recipes of food that is good so that people can actually try it. Non-vegans try to see that it's actually good, as they like to say. So that is one of the things I felt that has made a big difference. As many of my friends in school and in the university always are interested, they're curious to try these foods, and then they start being more open-minded and seeing that the taste is really great. So now they're open to learning more about the other aspects. As when people think that veganism is just a diet, which is just salad and rice, and it's boring. Honestly, I don't think many people would want to go vegan if that was the diet. So I think that we need to open people's perspective by actually showing them and leading by example. And then instead of just trying to be extremely pushy all the time, let them come to you. As when they see how you're thriving, they're going to be curious to know. And just leading by example is my way of thinking. I think that is one of the best ways to do, to change the world. Talking about veganism and talking about other aspects of life as well. I think that leading by example is the way to go. And I've also now, by the time I think tomorrow, if I get myself to it, I'm going to start a YouTube account. I decided I want to do a bit more activism and not just lightweight, like showing some food and a bit here and there. I want to incorporate my studies of environment so I can give and share the knowledge that I learned in these coming years for the benefit of the world, and just to have people that are interested and curious to learn about how our lifestyle is influencing the planet and what differences we need to make if we actually truly do care about the future. So I think that is my goal, is to work more on the environment and animals, but also keeping a bit of that health and food related. So a bit of all aspects.
Yeah, what would you say are some things that are happening right now on the planet that are being caused by animal agriculture? And maybe if we didn't, fund animal agriculture, that it would help the environment. What are some things?
Well, for the beginning, to start off, you can see the global greenhouse emissions that are going on. So many people are surprised when they hear that the animal agriculture is responsible for a lot of the carbon dioxide emissions, which are in turn polluting the planet, which then alongside other factors cause global warming. And I remember seeing a documentary called Cowspiracy, which really changed my whole perspective. If I remember correctly, 18% of global greenhouse emissions were from animal agriculture, compared to transportation, which most people think about transportation when they're talking about greenhouse gas. However, the transportation was 14% and animal agriculture is 18%. That just shows you how much of an impact what you eat has on the planet. And not only greenhouse gas emissions, but you can also see at the deforestation which is occurring to clear up land for the factory farms, for all of the crops that they make to feed the animals, for the slaughterhouses, and you combine all of this, and the numbers are insane. I saw a study that said that it was around, I can't remember exactly, but it was like in the 80%, more or less 80% of all deforestation is for animal agriculture. And 97% of deforestation of Amazon rainforest was for animal agriculture. So it truly is a huge difference. The huge difference compared to all other factors which we talk about. For example, palm oil, which still is bad, but it's not as detrimental to the environment.
Yeah, and something people forget about is the oceans. So
Yeah,
the
and the
oceans,
oceans.
they say the oceans die, we die. We're projected to have no fish in the ocean by 2048, zero, all of them gone, because all of the fisheries are severely overfished or depleted, and they just can't recover fast enough. We're taking about 2.7 trillion fish out of the sea. And on top of that, the amount of runoff from factory farms that's going into the ocean is polluting them and making them more acidic. It's literally, you can measure this acidity level of the ocean, and you can see the changes when you increase acidity, and it's like deteriorating shells of animals. It's destroying coral reefs. The temperature rising because the oceans absorb so much of the carbon dioxide, maybe over half of the carbon dioxide. They absorb that as well, and so that is going into the ocean and also increasing the temperature. Whereas a lot of the 50% of the oxygen comes from the ocean as well, and the acidity in the ocean is killing the phytoplankton that produce the oxygen. So there's all these like ripple effects that are happening, and at a fast rate, like no one's seen it this fast before.
And also with the plastic pollution, and even the whole ice melting and snow melting up in the poles, which are having a huge effect, as that also it has a huge impact on temperatures. And with the less snow and ice we have, the faster the temperatures are going to rise, which is a bit surprising to many people. But like all of these different factors combined, that's what is truly scary about the situation. It's not just individually, we have to look at it on a global perspective of everything that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And the simplest, easiest, most impactful thing that you could possibly do to help all of these things is to go vegan, and then to help others do that as well, because then you're making even more of an impact. And I think that's having empathy.
There's a lot of things that need to change, but there's a lot of these things that need to change. There's nothing you can do individually. However, like as you said, the biggest thing that you personally can do right now is just changing what is on your plate. Whilst, it's the easiest way, and it's also has a huge impact. Many people might think, I'm only one person, it's not going to make a difference. Like if everyone thought this way, then I don't even want to know how the world is going to look like.
Yeah,
I think that everyone just has to take action. There's different levels, but I mean, not everyone has to go around and pressuring the governments and organizations, but at least try to do something for the future, which it could be changing your diet. And if you definitely do not want to go vegan for whatever reason, even just reducing your animal consumption is going to have an impact for the environment at least. So I think that just you have to put things in perspective, and every single change, small steps, is what makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, where can people find you if maybe they want to reach out to you and connect with you?
If anyone wants to reach out, I would be very pleased. I always focus on trying to answer every single person, as I think that is always important to just be open to people with different opinions or even similar opinions and have conversations with them. So I answer to everyone that DMs me on Instagram, and my account is just Andre Venus. And if you're also interested, you can find me on YouTube, my new account, which is also Andre Venus, where I'm planning to do a few videos every now and then and see if I'm enjoying this way of activism, and just want to give it a try, YouTube as well.
All right, awesome. All right, well, take care. It's been great talking to you, and we'll be sharing this one as soon as it's ready to go.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
All right, absolutely. Thank you for listening to the Empathy Podcast. I appreciate you guys for listening. I hope you guys took away something and you can apply it in your day-to-day lives. Also, I can see that there's a lot of you listening that aren't subscribed, so please subscribe. Make sure you leave a review at Apple Podcasts. That helps people find my podcast so that more people can listen.